True Crime Podcast with Amber Hammond and Angel Mays.
Color Me Dead podcast contains some language and adult themes that might not be suitable for young or sensitive audiences, and so we do advise, listening discretion.
Yeah, because most of the time with our discussion on the different cases, we don't intend to romanticize or soften or omit any sort of detail because we feel that that takes away from the real horror that's in each crime.
We also have a tendency with our podcast to use a lot of sarcasm. We use that adult language I mentioned, dark humor, and sometimes a complete disregard for political correctness.
So basically, this is your get out of jail free card. Please use it now. If any of that sounds like it's really not up your alley, we totally understand. We hope that you enjoy it.
So thank you guys for tuning in and enjoy the podcast.
Oh, okay. So, if you were going to kill somebody, how would you do it?
After we went over this case, I think this guy had a pretty good idea.
He did have a good idea. He was wrong in a couple of ways.
Yes.
Because thinking that just because corpus delicti, there's no body, there's no crime. That's not exactly how it works.
Right. Exactly. Well, and he kind of got a little bit sloppy.
I think he just got a little too big for him britches.
And I think he was panicking due to money issues. And if you don't know who we're talking about, if you haven't watched our Instagram or our Facebook or anything like that, we were talking about the acid bath killer.
George Haig.
Yes.
John George Haig.
Haig.
Well, so to begin with, we thought it was Hay.
Yes.
Because when we look at it, being the Americans that we are, we're like, Haigh. The GH has to be silent, so it's Hay. It's not. It's Haig.
Well, and in our defense, we
really did Google pronounce it. Yeah. And it said Hay. So we thought we were going to have to... Not going to have to. We thought we were going to be allowed to sneak in the sassy Hey.
But no, it's Haig.
John George Haig, the acid bath killer.
Yes, he was also known for a while about being a vampire and different things like that, but the name that stuck.
So the name that stuck was the acid bath killer, and that was what he was most, referred to.
And this was a big thing over in England.
Big.
Yeah. I mean, still to this day, people talk about it.
Well, I just watched a documentary literally today that was produced and put out, a year ago?
I think so.
That you sent me? So, still very prevalent.
So, there's that.
This guy, had he been... What's the word I'm looking for? If he had been a little bit more clean, a little bit more OCD, and just...
Didn't let some things get in his way.
There's a word I'm looking for, and it's completely escaping me, and...
I'm no help.
I'm
looking at you like a doe in the headlights.
And sometimes I can make hand gestures at you and throw out words or grunts, and you'll tell me, but
not
on
this
today. One, not going to happen. But this guy needed to be precise.
Yes.
And he would have gotten away with this.
Oh, yeah. If he wouldn't have slipped up, it could have been unsolved, and there would have never been any sort of bodies to find.
It takes time, effort, dedication, and skill.
Yeah.
To even get as far as he did, if you think about it.
I know, and it's just, I don't know. Poor guy did not even have, the best upbringing.
He really didn't, which, he didn't have a bad upbringing. It's not like he grew up in slums or was abused severely or, kept in a fucking shed.
Right, but he just had those crazy... His parents were, ridiculously religious.
Right. They were part of a brethren.
Yes.
What was it called?
The Plymouth.
Yeah, the Plymouth Brethren. And they were essentially, if it were today, it would be the Mennonites.
Yes. Where
his dad actually, fashioned a fence around their home to where he only had, 10, 15 feet outside of the door until he hit the fence.
Yeah, and he couldn't play sports.
He couldn't, yeah.
Because all of that was of the devil. They didn't even celebrate Christmas
Foosball.
Yeah.
It's of the devil. I don't, you know what, whatever makes people happy with their religion or their beliefs or anything else, but anything that says I can't celebrate Christmas, my birthday, or Halloween,
Yeah. You
or
can't have
St.
any...
Patrick's Day.
Yeah. If you can't have any fun as a kid.
Right.
Like, that just sucks.
You know what I did learn about this guy? So he was accomplished as a pianist.
Yeah.
As a kid. Did you know that one of the concerts, he attended many concerts, classical concerts, where he saw some of the most profound classical artists like Tchaikovsky, one of my favorites, Antonio Vivaldi. Vivaldi is number 2 on my favorites in classical music. Saw him live. Blew my mind.
I mean, this guy had a lot of talent. Wasn't he like 10 when he was put into like a special school for performing arts and different things like that?
Essentially for like kids that excel.
Yeah.
So like gifted and talented kids education.
It's too bad that he couldn't have gone with that.
Instead of dissolving people in sulfuric acid.
Well, yep. I mean, there's always those roads that you can take in life. Apparently he had a wrong turn.
Holy shit. So, essentially, this kid grew up in a really, really ridiculously religious home. I make the jokes of, you know, foosball is the devil, but that was really his mom and dad.
Yeah, and his dad had that weird, like, birthmark or whatever. It was like a blue mark on his forehead.
The thing, yeah.
And he used to tell John, like, this is from when I sinned as a child. If you sin, you're going to get some sort of mark and everybody's going to know.
Right, but John was into that.
Yeah.
He was like,
he became
what do I gotta do to get
my own mark?
To get my mark.
And he never got one. So then that kind of gave him that whole, I'm
Clearly,
invincible.
I can do whatever the fuck I want, and nobody's ever gonna know because I never got
my tattletale mark.
Seriously. It's like Pinocchio with his nose growing. I can tell that you're lying, your nose is growing. Well, if John was under the impression that when he sinned or lied or whatever, he was going to have a physical mark that others could see.
Right. I guess I have a sin mark.
Where?
Every time I lie, my dimple gets fucking bigger.
That's
and deeper.
true.
I can't lie.
I have a hard time lying to 3 people total in my life. And because I did improv and because I did theater and because I'm a shady son of a bitch sometimes, I can lie. I can't lie to my husband. Even when I tell you to lie to my husband, I then will out myself.
Right.
I can't lie to my mom. Can't lie to my mom. And I can try to lie to my brothers, but they always call me out of my shit.
Damn them.
I know. Which...
I can't. I tried to lie, and then I'm also terrible, and that whole trying to cover up a lie with another lie and another, like, that's way too much work. I have no fucks to give in that, so I'd rather just be honest and be like, you know what, fuck it.
Hey, by the way, I hated your spaghetti.
It was terrible.
I appreciate the fact that you brought it over while I was sick. We fed it to the fucking neighbors.
Like, and even they didn't like it.
They threw it away. So this guy, George Haig.
John Joe's Haig.
John Joe's Haig. He thought he was invisible, untouchable.
He can do whatever he wants.
So instead of doing amazing things with his gifts and talents, he decides to become a fraudster.
Yes. Oh, we should also mention that he was born in 1909. So once he starts going into fraud and different things like this is late 20s, 30s.
Where it was easy to defraud people.
Yes.
Not like today.
Not like today. Today
there were
it's
not
a lot
the checks
harder.
and balances and the ways to uncover somebody. The way that you do things now is not how it would have been done then, obviously. So he became a fraudster.
Yeah.
And the first couple of frauds that he pulled that got him in trouble the first time, wasn't it the cars?
Yeah, he was selling cars that weren't even...
Like, didn't exist.
Which is just insane. How can you sell a car that doesn't even exist?
So did he, like, obtain a photo and, like, run to a person and be like, check out this sweet crank, like, hand-crankable car where we put, like, bacon grease on the fucking gears to make it go? Either way, he produced some sort of show.
Yeah, and he was good at it. And
he was.
They talk about how, like, he was always perfectly dressed.
He was very handsome, too.
He was. He had dark hair and blue eyes.
Like, striking blue eyes, very well-spoken. He was charismatic.
Which, I don't care who you are. You find a dude with dark hair and light blue eyes, everybody's going to be like,
dun da da dun da da dun da da dun bump ba da dum bump bump dun.
And so you have this guy who is very well spoken. He looks good. He dresses nice.
And if you guys Google his photos, he really is a very handsome guy. He's got
especially for that time
features. He really does.
Which is what helped him. It's too bad that he was so ugly and decayed
on the inside.
Yeah.
Which is it's really unfortunate because I can understand that he came from a hindered childhood, but he didn't come from a childhood that would indicate psychotic behavior.
Exactly.
Well, not to me, I guess, but I suppose it could.
When you look at most serial killers and different things like that, they have those kind of signs, triggers,
Right.
things that we talked about
Maybe
before.
being unsocialized.
So repressed that
Right.
he had to go over and above, like just out of control because he
Completely bonkers, just wanting to be something that he never was or something that his parents weren't. Because wasn't that his ultimate motive for some of the shit he did? He wanted to live a lifestyle,
an extravagant lifestyle, and
that,
that's
few people had back then. And in order to have that lifestyle, you either were of money, like old money,
Yep.
inherited money, family money, or he could have taken that gifted and talented thing and become something great, but that took more time and effort than selling a car that didn't exist.
And what was the other thing that he did? He had that whole
Oh, the solicitor thing.
yeah.
Where he pretended to be, I'm going to assume, like, the solicitor thing would have been, like, advertising. Where you claim to have, like, some kind of advertising company and you received money from people to do soliciting on their behalf. Or they could invest in you. Because people they were hearing about this guy and sending him checks.
Well, and he went under different names for certain different places.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
he was doing stuff in, like, different cities and things like that.
Oh, different offices. He had, like, 4 offices at one point in time where he was doing different fraudulent shit in each office.
And he was, even when he was a kid in school, his teacher said that, he's kind of mischievous, that he could forge signatures and stuff like that.
That's right. And he did.
Yeah, so
And
he started young.
Like, he practiced that shit.
Right? I can't even practice my own signature, so
Ugh.
this guy already has more patience and time than I do.
I tried to forge my mom's signature a few times and got caught, and I wasn't ever really good at it until it didn't matter.
Yeah, right?
Like, now I could probably mimic my mom's signature perfectly, but I don't need to check myself out of school.
Exactly. I just want to ditch school.
So what the fuck is that going to do me?
Nothing.
Nothing.
But he actually went to jail that one time when he was doing the soliciting thing because
Right.
he misspelled the town or
Yeah, it was
whatever.
the word guild, I
Yeah.
think. So,
And it missed the D in it.
or yeah, something like that. I can't remember if he missed the D or the I or whatever. But somebody who was obviously a grammar Nazi, paid attention to detail, much like I am when people misuse the word you are and your
Yep.
fuckers. So somebody caught that and was like,
We think this is fraudulent.
this guy clearly doesn't know his shit. This is not right. And they sent it to the police, and the police, on that hunch, picked him up.
And they arrested him for that. Could you imagine how many people would get arrested if you could just, like, grammar police them?
Holy crap.
Everybody.
If I could send an officer after every person over the age of 18 who used the wrong there, and there,
Overflows.
your, and your, as well as, what's the other one I'm thinking of?
Effect and effect.
That's another good one. That's not the one I was thinking of, but, ugh.
2 and 2.
Oh my god! That one. But if I could send somebody and be like, arrest that little son of a bitch that can't speak the Queen's English.
Dude, I would have been arrested earlier today with the Bree and Bree thing. In my defense, it was voice
funny.
to text.
See, voice to text should be your one get out of jail free card. Because the things that come out of my voice to text should probably be, like, submitted to, like, fuckyouautocorrect.com.
Right.
Because
My autocorrect, when we type in Color Me Dead podcast and it's all in one thing, will, like, space it out. And some of the sentences it comes up with is hilarious. I should start screenshotting.
I've had to stop because when I was still employed, I used voice to text to contact my boss.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't even remember what the hell I was trying to say to him. But when I looked down at the sentence from voice to text before I sent it was like, I'm running late. There is crack. I'm doing it. And I was like, holy shit. No crack. I'm not doing any crack. I'm just running late. Like, yeah.
Yeah, traffic, crack, same thing.
Whatever. Damn you, autocorrect.
So anyways, he gets arrested on that time. But before that, wasn't it 1934? I need to look back real fast. When he got married.
Yes. So he married a girl named Betty.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like a whirlwind romance.
Mm-hmm.
Because clearly he's a fraudster.
Mm-hmm.
He's handsome.
Mm-hmm.
He probably wooed her in all the right ways.
Mm-hmm.
Marries this girl. The marriage lasts like all of 4 months.
Yep, before he gets picked up.
And put into prison.
Yep, and at this point, after 4 months of marriage, she also realizes that she's pregnant.
Oh, that's right.
And so she ends up going through with the pregnancy, but she gives the baby up for adoption, and she bounces.
She had a daughter, gave the baby up for adoption, and packs up her shit and kicks rocks.
Yeah, which I'm sure she probably didn't want to give up her daughter for adoption.
But that was really...
It was the early 30s. You can't survive as a woman.
Even now, I have to commend people who follow through with unwanted pregnancy and then give the baby to someone who wants it.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard then. It's probably hard still now.
Oh, yeah.
But there are more options now.
Mm-hmm.
But for a person to continue with a pregnancy and give up the baby, to me, that's a noble fucking thing to do.
Well, and I'm sure she also felt like she didn't have an option. I mean, she
probably really didn't have a lot of options.
A single mom in the 1930s, and your husband is in jail for fraud.
Right.
Where are you going to really be able to go? You're not going to be able to provide that child with...
And maybe I'm up my own ass on this, but from what I understand, because my father, my stepdad, was a young man in the 1930s and 40s. He's older. He's almost 80. Women had jobs, but gender roles came into play then. The man was the breadwinner. They did make more money. They worked longer hours. They brought home the substantial amount of income it took to raise a family. So what the hell was she going to do?
Right, especially with the reputation of her breadwinner being in jail for fraud.
Right.
I mean, that's just bad. But thankfully, this woman got the fuck out when she did. Because what's to come?
Because she could have ended up as people soup.
Yeah, potentially. Or at least be associated, like, it's one thing to be associated with a man who does fraudulent things. It's another thing
to be associated with a man that makes goo out of people?
Yeah.
Yeah. For money.
Exactly.
So instead of applying himself to become somebody great, he assumed the wealth of somebody that was great.
And he was in and out of jail a few different times before he even graduated.
Right, but isn't that, like, prior to him going to jail, like, I want to say the second time he was a chauffeur for McSwan.
Yes.
Right?
The McSwans, which were rich, they owned...
like, extra wealthy family, and they had some kind of, like, amusement park /
tenant
like,
things. I don't even remember what all.
They had a couple of different things. So they had, like, an amusement center, and they also had other properties that they, like, leased out, whether they were commercial or private, like residences. I'm not 100% sure. But they had several different properties that they did. But the big one that I remember from the documentary that I watched was, like, an amusement thing. So these people were established.
They were well-to-do in the time.
They were.
And he would drive for them, and he would drive the son, Mac, around to collect the rent from all of these different places. Properties. And that's where he realized how much
they had
money they were kind of rolling in. And so they were friends for a time. He did that job for a while, then he quit, and then I think he went back into jail.
He got into some trouble for... defrauding people.
Other fraudulent things. He was also in a car accident. And what we forgot to say is back when he was a child with the strict religion thing, he would have these, like, night terrors of he would be in a forest. The trees would turn into crucifixes. The crucifixes would start to bleed, and there was, like, a tall, shadowy man that would take a a glass, something that would hold liquid, and would gather up the blood and would walk to him to like feed him the blood, but he always woke up before he actually drank it. But it became an obsessive
thing.
And so,
but when he got in that car accident, it was said that he had that head wound and ended up with a substantial amount of blood in his mouth.
Yep. And so he tasted that blood, and then that became like a weird, some people like the taste of blood.
I'm not opposed to the taste of blood. Like, me being me with my anxiety, I dig and pick at my fingers a lot, and they bleed. And so I'll stick my digit in my mouth.
Don't do that again.
What?
When you're bleeding and you stick your finger into your mouth.
Oh, well,
you're sticking it into like a
the bacteria germ fest that is my mouth. I know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm one of those people that, like, I'm not opposed to the taste of blood, but if somebody handed me, like, some weird, like, pimp chalice, was like, drink this goo, or, like, the really serious hunters in different parts of the world, including America, apparently, kill something and then either eat a part out of their kill or drink the blood or whatever, gross, fucking gross.
Yeah, like, if you can do that,
like, if it's a medium rare or a rare steak, I am fucking in. I will eat the shit out of that.
I'm a fat kid. I'll eat anything. Earlier, I was talking about putting dip in my hip bone and
with chips. Oh my god.
Fat kid first.
God, I love you.
Always first.
Always first. But if somebody handed me a warm cup of blood, I'd be like, listen, I'm adventurous.
Yeah. We should go and have a talk with
I'm
this
not
guy
that adventurous.
that I know. His name is Dr. So-and-so.
So, there's a psychotherapist. Her name is Dr. Blur Blur Blur.
I really don't like a lot of warm, liquidy things anyways. And blood is thick. And so it's like... Ugh.
See, you have more texture issues than I do, though.
I do.
Because a lot of the things that I love, you do not care for. Which me and Spencer, Brohio boys, squirrel hunt, we actually talked in depth about your distaste for grits today.
I can't do it.
And we were both like, who the fuck put sugar on grits? Like, butter, yes. Salt, yes. Hot sauce for Angel. But sugar? Who the fuck put sugar on grits? Is this like some sort of unheard back east thing? Because...
I don't know.
Whatever.
I don't eat grits at all. I am very texture thing. So how this guy could drink blood is beyond me. But I mean, there's a lot of serial killers that we will cover that were into that. One of my favorites is Richard Chase. But
sorry, back to the task at hand.
It's fine. He rented that, or he had that car accident.
Right.
That's where the bloodlust really started getting more intense.
Right.
And he also rented a space in a basement.
Right.
Like a little basement studio.
So it was concrete walls, brick walls, bare bones kind of.
Right. But while he's in jail, he decides, as he's sitting down, he's like, you know what? I need something better.
So, that documentary that I watched today, he got this idea from a different person.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, in France or wherever.
Right.
That also did acid.
And he heard about this. I can't remember how, whether it was news.
I think it was through the criminal library, because that's also where he read up more about sulfuric acid.
And also British law.
Yeah.
Because that's where he was under the impression that if there was no body,
there was no crime.
Right, he couldn't be convicted. So he read about somebody else using sulfuric acid to their benefit, and while he's in jail... Lots of time on his hands. He gets into this fucking library. He decides that he knows criminal law, which he did not.
Right.
Much like everybody else on Facebook. Goddamn keyboard warriors.
I know.
And he starts experimenting. So he asks people to bring him mice. If he can't catch them themselves, bring me mice from like the yard or wherever.
Yeah. And in the tin shop is where he starts dipping mice in acid to see if it really works.
Right. So he works in the tin shop. He's stealing supplies, specifically this acid, to see and experiment with it. And he's using mice, which clearly are a much smaller scale than what he does in real life. But
it's the same thing. Meat.
The shit
bone
works. And he also uses chicken. Like he took chicken from the kitchen and shit.
Yeah.
And it works.
And so after it works, that's when he decides, he's like, instead of doing these petty theft, this fraudulent thing, I mean, I still want to do fraud, but I'm going to
Right.
need to be able to get rid of the bodies, get
Right.
rid of...
I can't have people coming back and outing me for being a fraudster. I got to be able to get rid of them.
Yeah. So now maybe I'll start dipping them in acid. And he even said, like, he never asked himself if it was, like, right or wrong. He was just like, this is what I'm going to do now. He didn't care.
No.
His goal was to keep that extravagant lifestyle.
That he wanted. He
Mhm.
wanted, it was like the keeping up with the Joneses thing. Do you think that he was always that way? Like perhaps he learned about, through some avenue, people that lived these lavish lives and he wanted that and didn't have it and led such a repressed, private,
Mhm.
secluded life that it developed him into having like
Oh, yeah.
psychological issues or turned him into a sociopath or
I think so. I think that because of how he grew up, where he couldn't do anything, the only fun that he had was the piano or the Bible. He never knew the outside life per se.
fast
So once
cars, pretty women, and good food.
yeah, so once he got that, he was like, I want that. But instead of working towards it in a positive way, he was like,
Right.
I want the quickest route to that. So I'm going to start doing
Maybe he thought
these things.
maybe him being an adult or a young adult by that time,
Mm-hmm.
he felt like putting that much time and effort into becoming a great person was going to take away from the time that he had
Mm-hmm.
enjoying things. And so he was like, I'm just going to take it.
Probably.
Because not maybe, I have heard that in criminal cases with theft
Mhm.
and or what's in recent crimes where they're like, yeah, I could have put in the time and effort to go to school, but that's, 8 years of my life to become a doctor if I graduate, if I make it.
Or I can just do this.
Or I can just fucking carjack and
Mhm.
take it.
And so after he gets out of jail, after he knows that the acid is going to work, he runs back into Mick Swan,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, oh, buddies again.
Right, because they're like the same age though,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and
they kind of hit it off. Like,
so
stop and think about it. John George Haig is a fraudster. He's
Mhm.
charismatic. He would probably hit it off with just about anybody.
exactly.
Mick Swan, being his age, and maybe he doesn't have...
And Mick Swan's parents, Donald and Amy, really liked John.
What's not to like?
Right. So he runs back into Mac. They become friends.
Mm-hmm.
They go back to, his parents' house where he creates that relationship again. There's that
Mhm.
tie back in, right back into their life type of thing. And things are good. But Haig has a different plan from
Mhm.
from the get-go.
Literally, yeah, he's got like an ulterior motive
Exactly.
from step one into the house.
Mm-hmm.
So with Mac,
Mm-hmm.
he decides...
They're gonna go... After some time, like, George waited until, like, the perfect opportunity.
Right.
And George Haig, goes to Mac and's like, hey, let's go to the pub. Let's go down to the tavern,
Mm-hmm.
have a few drinks, let's hang out, and then I want to show you my new, like, basement space that I've rented and what I want to, do with it.
He's got some kind of proposal.
Yes.
Essentially, because Mac is a businessman,
Mm-hmm.
with his family's bullshit, collecting rent or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So then Haig says, let's go have a few beers. Who doesn't want to go knock down a few cold ones?
Right.
I know that at any given moment, unless I'm dying of pneumonia, somebody could be like, let's go get a Bloody Mary, and I'm going to agree. Let's go do this. I want to talk to you about my plan, and then I want to show you the space in which I'm going to do it. Awesome.
Especially as a friend, he was
Right.
probably like, hell yeah.
Dude, if I called you on a fucking Tuesday at 11 and was like, let's get a mojito, I want to talk to you about this studio
Mm-hmm.
that I have for our podcast, you'd be like, let me put my kids in the dog kennel.
Right. Let me lock them up, and I'll be right over.
Let me get a babysitter.
That's a total joke.
Totally kidding. Let me find a babysitter.
Right.
Let's go do lunch. Show me what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Totally normal.
I'll do just about
Interaction.
anything for food. So if you're like, yeah, let's get together. We're going to have some drinks. We're going to have some lunch.
If somebody walked in the house right now and said, I'm going to need you to punch your friend for this mojito and these sweet potato fries with this aioli sauce, I'm punching you.
As long as you share, I'll accept it.
Dude, I'm all about it. Like, I will 50-50 everything that they're going to give me Just know that I love you, and I'm gonna give you Zombieland 45% when I hit you.
Okay, let me take off my glasses.
I'm gonna give
and don't break
you
my nose.
45%. I'm only gonna hit you in the shoulder.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
So then he lures Mac McSwain
Mhm.
to this place, this dank little basement cement hole that he's got.
Right, and right before this is when that weird dream of the crucifixes and the blood and stuff like that. He's starting to get those a lot more, which is what kind of gears him up for it.
So, but this isn't really founded. I mean, this is based on information that he spewed out.
Right, which they're not sure if it is true or if it isn't true.
Or if he was just trying to pave the road for, like, an insanity plea because...
Exactly, which there could be an element of truth for it with what happens. So he gets Mac down into the basement.
Okay.
And he then grabs a pipe and bashes his friend Mac over the head until he's dead. He bashes in his skull, basically.
So, blunt force trauma, lead pipe,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm going to say that a grown man smashing another grown man with a lead pipe, it's not going to be that many blows.
Right, exactly. Your head isn't as strong as we all think it is.
I don't know. Jameson's head's pretty fucking sturdy, dude.
Well,
I've seen that kid take some headers into some shit, and I'm like, oh, that's it. That's the one. We're going to the emergency room. And he jumps up and he's like, I'm okay.
He was legit born with a solid skull, though. So
That's true.
I mean, he just has that kind of...
Squirrel Hunt. Jameson was born with craniostenosis, like his dad, where his skull fused prematurely, was born that way. I watched this baby be born. They pulled him out, and I looked at him and was like, his head is funny. Me never seeing a child be born before.
Right.
Amber was like, their head is supposed to be funny, because I was like, holy shit, dude, you just gave birth to fucking Predator. And then his skull really was fused. He had to have surgery to cut and open it.
That way his brain could grow as he grew.
Right.
So when I say that, my husband and my son are especially hard-headed, it's legit.
It's legit. Because her husband actually had...
Multiple surgeries.
Multiple surgeries. And he was kind of a pioneer, so to speak, in craniostenosis in his area at that time. And Quinn scars are...
They're awesome.
Severe.
I love his scars.
So do I, but we can be like, he was attacked by a bear, or he got his head bit by a shark, or, he was working on a car and the jack fell down and it smashed his head, and then Ember went out with her PCP strength in her... We can tell all kinds of,
fun,
bogus,
crazy
bullshit stories.
Yeah.
But anyway, back at the ranch.
Anyways.
There we go again.
I know.
Oh, fucking...
So after he bashes in
Egg hunt.
After he bashes in his skull, he slits his throat. And then that's when he says that he took a mug and he took some blood from his neck and he drank it. So that's when he starts doing that whole weird, I'm going to kill you and then I'm going to drink your blood. And he says that he does that because in that dream, he always gets to that point where somebody's handing him the mug of blood, but he never gets the opportunity
to consume.
Yes. So, there could be an element of truth. There could not be. He could have just been a weirdo.
He could have been full of shit. He could have been telling the truth. We will never know.
Right.
Fun little...
Yeah.
Unsolved
So
mysteries.
then, the weird thing is after he does this, he just leaves his friend Mac to finish dying in the basement, and he goes home and takes a fucking nap.
Okay, listen. If I killed somebody, I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna sleep afterwards.
Well, not only that, maybe it's just me and my own paranoia, my own whatever, going back to that I'm a terrible liar thing. I don't know how you could just leave a dead body and have, this confidence that nobody might find it in the time that you're gone. Because to me, I'd be like, somebody's gonna know.
Dude,
and they're gonna be down there and they're gonna find it.
I don't even leave my search history on my tablet because somebody might find it. God knows what I was looking at, because I'm a weirdo.
Yeah.
I could have been researching serial killers. I could have been looking up...
Yeah, and so that kind of plays back to that whole thing of him thinking that he's invincible because he's sinned. There's no mark, there's no nothing.
Nobody knows.
He'll never get caught.
I'm never gonna get caught.
But he just had this... Oh, goodness.
Sorry.
No, I think it's amazing. It's amazing. So he would go home and take a nap, and then he wouldn't even return until the next night. And when he returns, he's like, all right, now is my thing to get rid of this body with how I learned in the tin shop with the mice. So he's got to put his friend into this 40-gallon drum. And it takes him over an hour to shove his friend into the drum.
Well, doesn't he piece him out?
No, he should have.
Did he put him in whole?
No, what he did is he tried to fold his friend in half, and then the drum was laying on its side. He tried to shove him in as much as he could, and then he basically took each side of the drum and with his feet pushed his friend in
Holy
as deep as he
shit.
could. It took him well over an hour to do this. And so then after he does that, then he has to put the drum upright, and now he has to fill it full of sulfuric acid. And as he's doing this, it's a slow process because he doesn't have his little setup yet, and it takes forever to fill up. But he's not expecting, because when he was just dipping the little mice and everything, things were more ventilated. It's a small amount, it's a small animal, but when you're dipping a full-grown man in sulfuric acid, there's a lot of fumes that are going to happen. So he has to run in and out of this basement.
I can't even imagine, because I can barely fry things without hurting myself and or choking on what comes off of fried food.
If it's anything,
Let
like
alone
even like cutting onions.
Body in acid. Oh, fuck onions, dude.
Yeah.
I did
Your
learn-
eyes burn.
I learned a trick with onions. So I will actually rub a little bit of Vaseline under my eyes and hold a matchstick, like a match, in my teeth as I'm doing it. It doesn't completely prevent you from being accosted, but it works. And I learned that from Heloise. She writes books, probably
Well, maybe
dead
that
now,
would have helped him.
because these books are way, way old. Heloise's Helpful Household Hints. Which probably would have helped him, because I'm assuming there's not a whole lot of gear that was manufactured for that kind of practice. Like, you can't just put on some welding gloves and a snorkel mask and be like, I got this shit.
I mean, he did. Let's go diving. He did have like the big muck boots. He had his apron and he had gloves to try to, make sure he doesn't get acid on himself.
Right.
But like I said, it takes so long because nothing was ventilated down there. And so he has to go outside to catch his breath, to keep his eyes from burning, all those kind of things. He finally gets done. He pops a lid on it, and he's like, all right, we're good for a couple of days. During this time, when he leaves Mac to stew into a people soup, this is when he goes to Mac's parents, and this is in 1944, so it's right during the war, everything like that, and he goes to his parents and he says, hey, Mac fled to Scotland because he doesn't want to get drafted. And while his parents were kind of like, what? Why would he do that? They had no reason to not believe John George Haig.
Right, because family friend, he's a friend of Mac's.
Yeah, they're
Why
good
would
buddies.
Right.
And so then he would go back a couple of days later to check on his friend. And he has a big wooden stick, dowel, something like that, to stir up his friend to make sure, to make sure that he's mostly dissolved.
So there would be, no bones, no anything identifiable.
Right, before he's going to do anything. And so when he pops open the lid, there was like a blackish liquid that had red streaks through it. And he stirs it up and he scoops out this liquid with like a bucket, which is just...
Dude, that's fucking nasty.
When you think of dissolving a complete person, that is a lot. Like, if you actually sit and you think about taking who you are and turning you into...
Snot? Bloody snot?
Yeah.
Black snot.
There's nothing left of you.
No.
It's just it's bizarre.
You know what that reminds me of? Do you remember the movie Beastmaster?
Yes.
Where the creepy thingies with the, bat arms grabbed people and they, squished them around in their little bat wings and then dropped them and it was, bones and slime? Mm-hmm. Sort of kind of like that.
Yeah. And,
only less bones.
The kind of gelatinous goop that turned into it is like if you're cooking Jell-O and before it's completely hardened up, where it's not a solid, but it's not a liquid. It's that weird thing in between. That's basically what it was. And some of the chunks didn't fully dissolve because he dumps this down the manhole, which is just another terrible thing in and of itself. You're dumping acid down a manhole. So that's crazy. I wonder if they ever went back to see if there was any sort of like erosion or something that happened.
You have to think that with sulfuric acid there would be some kind of like composite damage to the concrete, the manhole, I don't know.
Something.
Maybe it's kind of like that hydrogen peroxide contact solution shit that
Right.
I've fucked myself up with. If you put your contacts in that stuff to remove protein and build up off your contacts and you let it sit for a while and then you give it a quick shake and then you rinse it off and stick it in your eye, you're okay.
Right.
But if you like take that shit, rinse it off with that stuff and stick it back in your eye, you end up with like chemical burn on your eye. Maybe with the sulfuric acid,
After a time.
you stick a body in it, it dissolves the body, then the acid starts to lose its potency, and then you dump it down a sewer through a manhole into water, and then it's diluted. It's got people gack.
Yeah. Ugh.
I don't know.
I don't even know, but there were some chunks like at the bottom. So like he
Ew.
settled down. Much like unfiltered apple juice or something, where you get that like sediment at the bottom.
Oh God.
and so John takes a stick and like scrapes out the bottom and just throws that down the manhole too. And so he thinks he's gotten away now with the ultimate sin.
This guy's got an iron gut.
Oh.
He has to. Like,
Oh.
if you can crack your friend over the head, which I get it, he meant to do that before they ever really got close, then river dance them into a barrel, cover him in acid, stir him, and then pour this person and scrape the remnants out of a barrel. Ugh, dude.
And I'm sure he probably had some sort of like...
It's probably the same guy that would have like gagged and puked over a baby diaper, but can scrape people out of a fucking barrel.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We all have our limits. But I'm sure the kind of like weird murder boner that he got from this, because
I'm sure.
now he knows they're never going to find this body.
It's that big-headedness, that confidence that you get. Like, it's almost like when you cheated on a test and you got away with it and you got a good grade. And then the teacher was like, but this kid got 100% out of everybody else and like commends you for it, and nobody knows. You're like, yeah, I'm going to grow up to be a goddamn spy. I can get away with anything.
Right? I'm sure that there was something like that. And the weird thing is
Untouchable.
he was very methodical too, because he kills his friend, he dumps him down a manhole, he does all this kind of stuff, but he stays in touch with Mac's parents to the point that he's also pretending to be Mac and sends his parents letters.
For a long time, though.
For almost
Not
a
like,
year.
He didn't just like send like 1 or 2 postcards. It was like consistent correspondence for 12 months.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
And so after a time, he knows that he wants all of Mick Swan's inheritance, all of the money, all of those kind of things.
Not just, like all of the McSwan wealth. Like
Yes.
every part of it. So that means
He's going to have to get rid of them. But before he does that, he needs to make a couple of changes to his method. He needs to get some things. He needs to get that tin mask to where he can kind of...
So he can breathe without breathing in people vapor?
Yeah, so he looks like a piece of shit Iron Man.
Oh my God.
In the very beginning. That way he can protect his beautiful little face from all the fumes. He also had to get a stirrup pump. It's kind of... You put like a hose in one end, and the hose, it's like a siphon machine. But you have this like, almost like a pedal bike thing, where you stir it with your hands to pump it. But it would take from the vats of sulfuric acid into the drum with the people. It would cut down the time, because he was very much a work smarter, not harder kind of guy. And he also got himself a couple more drums, because those seem to work pretty well. And so he's feeling pretty good about this setup. And he says in his diary, and he admits that during this time, He also killed a woman, basically to test out his new equipment. But she was never identified, and so they're really not sure. They don't count it as part of any part of his conviction towards the 6.
Well, there's not any proof other than him saying it.
Right. Which I can believe him, though.
I don't doubt it.
You got all this new stuff. You're gonna want to test it out before you go for your moneymaker people. And so on July 2nd, he gets the McSwans to come to his basement. That's when he beats them to death with the same pipe that he killed their son with.
Right.
He tosses them into the vats.
It's truly tragic that, like, mom, dad, and son
Yeah,
all fell
whole.
to the same fate.
Mm-hmm.
Smashed,
Yep.
and then shoved in acid.
Yep, but before he shoved them in acid, he drank their blood too.
So he says.
So he says.
So he's kind of like creepy little vampire,
Mm-hmm.
acid bath killer.
Yep.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This brings the death toll up to 4 if you count that one unidentified woman. If not,
Okay.
it's for sure 3.
Right.
So after this, he goes to the landlady and just said, the McSwans moved to America. Forward me all their stuff. I
Did
can
he say
forward
America
it.
or... Because I think in the documentary it said, like, South Africa.
That is...
Oh,
The
moving-
next people.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Because he tells everybody that these people move to all different kind of places.
Which would be easy to pull off. Excuse me, I'm sorry. You could be like, I killed these people, I put them in acid, I stirred them with a fucking spoon, and then I poured them somewhere. And then when people start asking, you could be like, oh, I'm working as their power of attorney.
Mm-hmm.
They've actually moved. Here's where you can forward all of their shit. And there would be no way to confirm this.
There was no Facebook. There was no being able
You
to
couldn't
call.
Google that. There was no international phone code to call.
Exactly.
And if there was, you couldn't fucking afford it.
And when you have this very charming, charismatic guy who's been in the scene with this family that
yeah.
everybody knows, they're going to be like,
Oh,
okay.
trustworthy.
Yeah. So,
So did the McSwans not know that he was, like, in and out of prison
I
and
don't
shit
think-
for being, like, a fraudster?
I don't think so.
Because why would you allow somebody like that into your life?
I don't think that they knew. Because he would tell them, like, when he left that job to go on to a different job,
Mm-hmm.
finger quotes, they didn't know that
Finger quotes.
they didn't know that he was doing fraudulent things. They just thought he moved on and he got a
Was
better
doing something
job.
else. Right, doing
Yeah.
bigger and better things.
So what he does is he went through all of their stuff in the house. That way he knew any and all questions when it came to their pension. And that's just creepy. So you kill all these people, you go through all of their stuff in their house, you know their birth certificate, you know every little detail.
But that would then further that believable thing where you're
Mhm.
like, I am the executor of their estate. I am
Mhm.
their power of attorney. I know everything about them. But it also gave him an opportunity to be like, this is mine and this is
Mhm.
mine. And all the rest of this shit can go somewhere else. Which is fucking bananas.
Mhm.
Because of all the shit he kept, do you know what sticks out in my head? He kept their dog.
It's just weird. I can't even.
I'm like, you know what? I hope he was a good pet owner. At least he kept the dog.
Right?
He didn't put the dog in acid.
So after he gets all the money from the McSwans and he sells their property because they don't need it anymore, they're living in America when in reality is they're down a manhole somewhere. There's nothing left of them. He would get an estimated about 6,000 pounds, which by today's value in American money is just over $324,000. So in that time, that was a ton of
actually,
money.
Yeah, because watching that documentary, they talked about he actually made off with more like 8,000 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume that's a couple more $100,000. So like maybe $500,000 by this time in like today's money, American dollar.
Well, I know for sure in the next set of murders that he does, he gets 8,000 to 9,000 pounds out of that.
Oh, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of. I keep wanting to like move ahead to this one.
It's okay. We're
know-
almost there.
You don't want it. Oh, get there so I can tell you why I'm excited.
Okay. So after that, he moves into a hotel in Kensington, and this is mostly filled with like rich old widows and different things like that. So he gets to live the high life. He has these old widows that just love him. They love having him around. He's gambling. He's living this life that he would have never been allowed to live.
He did have a gambling problem, though. I remember that. And that's that is the reason that he had to continue with his acid bathing, was because he needed more money. And had he had no gambling problems, the money that he obtained from the McSwans would have sustained him
for a long
time, probably until he died.
Mm-hmm.
But because Moneybags fucking acid bath wanted to live that lavish, sorry.
I know, that was beautiful. Moneybag Mick acid bath.
He wanted to live that champagne and caviar dream on top of being able to gamble as though he had disposable income. Well, he didn't, because he had no other income coming in.
Yeah.
So he burns through the McSwan fortune, and here he is.
Yep. And so after this, he would also claim that he killed a guy named Max, but again, no evidence, not for sure.
This is his testimony.
Yep. And so after a time, money starts running out. So this is where he finds the rich doctor and his wife, Dr. Archibald Henderson and Rose Henderson. And
we just call him Archie, because I will fuck up Archibald all the way.
Archibald Henderson.
So just Archie Henderson. We're gonna redneckify that.
Yes, which is really sad because he finds them because they're selling a house, and so he goes and makes an offer on the house, but the deal fell through. But that was his plan all along. And he just wanted to get into their life. And that was the way to do it, is through this house thing. So after that, they become friends. And they party together. They do all these sort of great, wonderful things. He would play the piano for them, have them really talk about themselves. Rose especially loved to talk about herself.
Sounds like me.
So they create this,
we can totally be friends. Can I talk about me? Awesome. Listen.
Listen.
Goodness.
So this would go on for over 5 months. And he would try to get to know every little detail about them and what they think is just being a good friend. It's so when he plans to kill them later, he can answer any and all questions that he may need to. And
this is what upsets me, is that he put that much effort into this to get away with it, and then got so sloppy.
Yep. So it's also at this time that he moves out of the basement, and he gets a storehouse, which we posted the picture of on our pages. So,
which I disagree with.
Yeah.
Moving was a bad gig.
Well,
everything was working. He had this spot. He had a dump hole. It was easy peasy. It was working.
Exactly. But then on February 8th of 1948, he started staying, actually, in the Henderson home. And blood dreams starts coming back, or so he says. So this is 4 years later. Well, I guess technically 3 years after his last set of murders. And so it's becoming a thing where he needs to fulfill that again. And he's gotten to know the Hendersons well. He's living with them. Nobody's going to question anything that he has to say after they disappear.
Is it just me that it's totally bizarre that you would meet this person in a social setting, in a hotel or whatever? You become friends with them, so you're like, hey, come live with me in my mansion.
Yeah.
I love you. You're my favorite person. We've talked about #compound life.
Yes.
And in a compound situation, yes, please come live with me. Please don't come live with me any other time, because there's not enough room.
Right. There's never. I like to walk around my house.
Tits a swinging.
Yeah.
Dude, when my kids are with their mom,
there's
naked and afraid, less the afraid in my house.
Unless you're cooking bacon, then you're a little afraid.
Dude, even then I just feel adventurous. I'm not even afraid.
Exactly.
But I just think it's weird that you would meet somebody in a social setting that you didn't know for a long time and then invite them to live with you. Like, cohabitation is a big deal to me.
It is, but maybe it just wasn't then. I don't know.
I guess in the
40s?
like, people were just like, oh,
They were
bestie.
They were
we
a
have
lot
the
more
same-
friendly.
We have the same shoes. Come live with me.
Right?
No sex before marriage, but come live with me.
You can come live with me,
What?
let me talk about myself, and you play me the piano. That was basically the deal.
Shit, that might even work today.
And so, a few days later, he starts jonesing. He starts itching. He wants to kill them. Time is running out. Debt is piling up. He's fucking gambled all of his shit away. He's got to do something. And he has his eyes on the prize. Like, he knows what these people are bringing in.
Right.
And
Well, if he lives with him, he's walking around. He can see it.
yeah. And so here is where he goes. He finds that in this home, they have a legit gas mask. Like, from the war and different things like that. So he's
Oh,
like,
shit.
fuck yeah. Taking this way better than my piece of
I needed this years ago.
Right? Way better than my Iron Man mask I have going on. Or my little tin mask. And he also takes Archie's revolver. And he's like, hey, let me show you my new place in Crawley. I want to show you my new storehouse. Different things like that. And so they get into Archie's car. And they drive. And they get to the place. And instead of beating them over the head like he did with the McSwans, he just shoots them. He ties him up, throws him into his little warehouse. He goes back to the house. He goes to Rose and he's like, hey, Archie kind of got sick on the ride. I need you to help me bring him some things. You know, and he wants to see you. And at first she didn't want to go, but then she's like, oh, fine. And so he takes her, then he will shoot her as well. So now both of the Hendersons are dead, and he would tie them up and leave them overnight too. I don't know if maybe he just got such a high off of killing people that he was like, I'll come back to this later.
I would assume it's a very much a rush.
Oh yeah. I don't know what it was with him. I'm assuming it was probably that kind of like rush. He got high off of that for a minute.
And
it'll
also not drinking their blood and like...
Right. Because it
Ew.
says in this one that he's basically like when you give a cat catnip and they start rolling around in it and getting all crazy. That's basically what he was saying that he did with their blood. Like he had a field day.
Basically what I do with Taco Bell mild sauce.
Yeah. You're just going to start rubbing it all over yourself.
Or the sloppy pig sloppy sauce. Have you
Mhm.
tasted that shit yet?
No.
Oh my god, I'm taking you to lunch.
Please do.
That shit is legit. That sauce that they put with all of their stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I literally ask for extra finger quotes.
I'm pretty
So-
sure that I've had it before. We have this new restaurant in our town called the Sloppy Pig that's actually owned by a good friend of mine.
Barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome barbecue. Awesome brisket. They make a sauce called the sloppy sauce, which is like, I don't know, gourmet barbecue. And I'm not a barbecue sauce girl,
It's heaven.
but that stuff I will order extra so that I can take it home and put it on
Everything.
literally everything. Doesn't matter if it's potato chips, burritos. I put it on bread instead of mayo.
All of the things.
Sorry,
No,
squirrel hunt.
no,
back
you're
at the ranch.
You're fine. You're fine. And okay, then he just tosses them in the vats, lets them stew for a couple of days. But this time, like, they're still the perfect intact foot of Rose. But he doesn't care. He's just like, you know what? This place is big enough. I'm going to dump all of this over in this side of the yard. It will dissolve in a few days, which
Right.
it does.
So instead of, in his old place, pouring it down the manhole into the sewer,
Which was smarter.
which was smarter,
We're
he's
just gonna
now
dump it in the yard.
Yeah, he's dumping it into like a rubbish pile,
Mhm.
like a trash pile, and he's not even waiting for it to be fully dissolved. That's where he's getting sloppy. He's
Mhm.
putting it out into the open,
Mhm.
and he's not even doing it to completion
Yeah. And
because there wasn't just a foot;
yeah.
there was a denture.
Yeah, that's the next lady.
Oh, sorry,
Oh, it's cool.
I'm doing it again.
It's fine. You're just like, I want to talk about all of the murders.
Well, that's the one I'm excited to talk about.
Yeah.
So anyway, moving forward.
Anyways, and it's actually this one. It was the Hendersons that had the pet, I guess. According
crap.
to
I
these,
was okay.
according to my research notes that I have right here.
This one, this case, I didn't research it. Ember researched it. I read it. I watched the documentary today, and I was really excited about the last lady.
Right.
So my information is a little bit jumbled in my brain matter, but but he does. He does keep the dog.
Mm-hmm.
And what else?
This is where he also sells the Henderson's home. He goes over the top to try to hide this one. He writes a letter to Rose's brother saying, we moved to Africa. It was like a long 15-page letter talking about all of this kind of stuff. And he was so good at forging.
Right. That he mimicked the handwriting and the signature and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one when I was watching the documentary, I was like, who the fuck just picks up all of their shit, sells 90% of it, and bails to South Africa?
Yeah.
Out of fucking nowhere. Like, I could understand if somebody was like, you know what, I'm going to be a farmer and a big game hunter. I'm going to pack up all my shit and go to South Africa. I'd be like, okay.
Right. Well, and some people can pack up and leave, but this is where Rose's brother is kind of suspicious because they're living a good life where they're at. Like, why would they really want to?
But they never even indicated that they would want to go anywhere else, especially a continent away.
Right.
To a completely different... That would be like me packing up all my shit and be like, well, I'm going to go to fucking Greenland.
Right.
And live on the tundra.
Yeah.
And hunt fucking muskox. I don't know. You'd be like, what the fuck? No.
Yeah, so Rose's brother is a little suspicious, but he's like, all right. He falls for it, basically. You know, he gets all these letters. They keep corresponding back and forth. And John George Haig is so good at forging, and he knows enough about their life that he can pull it off.
And he does.
And which is just, I mean, I guess that's great for him, but that's insane. And so he keeps doing that in order for Rose's brother to not call the police. So after this, he gets the 8,000 pounds. He also, this is the one weird thing, and it's important for later, and totally forgot to mention this because we got excited and wanted to jump right into the murders. When he got out of jail, before he met back up with Mac, he lived with some friends, and he became associated with and struck a relationship with a young lady named Barbara, who's 20 years younger than him. And so this whole time throughout all the murders, he has a girlfriend. And after he kills Rose, he actually gives his girlfriend Barbara some of her old dresses. Some of her really nice, expensive things. He also gives a handbag to a sweet old lady, Mrs. Olive Duran Deacon, who he had met in the hotel when he was living there, became close friends with.
This is the one that I super love.
Yeah, so he gave her a handbag. That was Rose's.
Okay.
And after that, he said that he took another life, which was a woman named Mary, but there's zero evidence that that person even existed. So before he gets to Mrs. Duran Deacon, the one that he sold the handbag to, he actually crashes his car on purpose in order to get some more money. And when they go and they find the car, there's actually a dead body, like, kind of next to it. They don't know if it's in relation to him or anything like that, but it is just odd that there was a dead body.
Or if it was just completely coincidental.
Right, we don't know for sure.
Nobody
but
knows.
It is odd to find a dead body right next to this monster's crash car.
Right.
Anyway, so now it's the end of 1948, and he's already running out of money. He blew through almost $400,000 in, like, less than a year, which is just insane. So you know that
I would
he's
have
spiraling.
to, like, I would really have to fucking try. Because you and me, being the frugal
right
people that we are, like, even I think the most extravagant I get on things is either my makeup or my husband. I spend more money on my husband than I spend on myself. I spend more money on him than he spends on himself.
Right. I'm the same way.
$100,000
in a year, and you're one dude. You're just blowing money.
Oh, just everywhere.
Yeah.
I just emulated jacking off and spewing everywhere in a form of spending extravagant amounts of money.
So think about blowing through almost $400,000.
Dude. It's been so long.
That's a serious gambling problem, is what this
really
guy
is.
has.
Like, for us being oil filled, it's been almost 5 years since we've made, like, good oil money.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, we're not like living large by any means.
No,
all we're doing is like putting money in the bank and having some really good barbecues and a few concerts.
Yeah, where you could go to the store and you're like, give me the finest steak, sir.
You're like, I'm getting goddamn Havarti cheese this time, and not the prepackaged shit. I'm getting it out of the deli.
Right? Living the high life.
Get the Gouda bells.
The Gouda balls.
Or when you like go to the store and you buy shit that's not on the list. Yeah. That's when you know you have money.
Or you're not like whipping out your calculator to the very cent.
Holy shit.
And having that like panic moment at the checkout to make sure that you're not spending over the amount. And this guy is just
fucking
losing control.
Cash everywhere. Like, I get upset if I spend over $10 for lunch on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy is like wiping his butt with hundreds.
Yeah. Like it's nothing. It's just,
Jesus.
It is crazy. So obviously, he's running out of money. He needs to kill again. He gets a loan, but it needs to be repaid in less than a week. And he has no way.
So he must have gone to some kind of like shark.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't a bank loan.
Right.
That was a shady, shitty, like, seedy situation.
We'll put you in an acid bath if you don't pay us back.
Like, here's your terms. You have 1 week, and after 1 week, we're adding 30% less some fingers.
Yep. And so this is where now he puts his eyes on Mrs. Duran Deacon. He's like, this is the lady.
So this lady I super enjoy for a couple of reasons. So this lady actually talks about being kind of a pioneer for artificial fingernails.
Acrylic nails, all the bitches have them. I have them right now.
No, they're all the rage, and they're very like common now.
Yeah.
But back then, that had to have been some like
rare
shit. Yeah.
She would have been rolling in so much money.
To be able to afford artificial nails and be like a production person. Like, she was a person that like engineered this, so to speak, or had somebody engineer it for her based on her ideas. But acrylic nails were not that, like, they were not known then. This is like pre-1950. You know what I mean? Like, what, 48, 49?
Yeah, 48.
That's where we're at?
Yeah.
48.
You had to be a rich bitch to get that stuff now.
But not only that, this saucy little woman ran around in like rare fur.
Oh yeah, she was
like, what was the fur that she was wearing?
I don't remember.
Oh, I'm gonna have to Google it. But she was wearing like some rare Chilean like muskrat. I don't even know. Like, when they mentioned it in the documentary, I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
So I had to Google it. And essentially you have to like hunt an entire like area to death to create one coat. And this little fruit is just flossing around with her fake fingernails and her ultra rare fur coat.
I look up to women that like put effort into themselves, because most of the time I can't even be bothered to brush my hair. Today's like the first day that I've done my hair in like a week. I can't.
I honestly,
it's too much time.
Do you know that this is the first day I've gotten ready, and I couldn't tell you how long, but when I got let go from my job, the first thing I thought of as I was driving home, don't get me wrong, I was disappointed to have been discharged from my job and having to go home and do the whole unemployment thing and everything else. As I slipped my fat ass into a pair of sweats, I was like, it is the dawn of the sweatpants, the dawn of the sweatpants. I was so pumped. I was like, I now get to live the next several weeks in activewear and sweatpants. So for ladies that get up and put on like slacks,
dude, I commend you.
And like put bobby pins and shit in their hair and wear accessories.
Thank you for being the example.
Thanks for being a real lady.
Yeah, because I am not one.
I'm wearing denim today, and that to me,
that's classy.
Is effort.
So these women that can wear like these extravagant fur coats and all their
gowns
pearls
and jewelry and have their makeup and hair and shit done.
Applaud those ladies, because that takes a lot.
I just want to high five the bitches that wear heels daily and all day.
Oh yeah, they're they're superhuman.
I don't really know. They made like some kind of blood oath with a crossroad demons to like not have feeling in their feet. Moving on.
Anyways, so he decides, she comes to him with this whole fake fingernail thing. And so he's like, great, come to my factory. We'll discuss this further, because she thinks that he is some sort of businessman. But he's really not. So she takes him there, and as she's leaning over to whip out her stuff to talk about everything that she's doing, he shoots her, drinks her blood, turns her into people soup.
Right.
But he tries to go back and say that she left and all these different kinds of things, like, and was already starting to try to do the fraudulent thing, but people didn't believe him. They decide to call the cops, and he gets picked up a couple of days later because everybody's like, this lady's missing. This is not like her. Check into this guy who is trying to say that they're best friends and trying to like get into all of her stuff.
It was a Persian lamb coat.
Dang.
It was important for me to let you know.
No, that's good information. We needed that. And it's also at this time, right before he gets arrested, that Rose's brother is messaging him again. This guy won't leave John alone, but he's saying, you know, our mother's sick, you need to come back, blah, 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 blah. So he was going to plan on killing Rose's brother, too, because...
like any way to tie up the loose ends and cover this up.
Rose would come back if her mother was sick and going to die. So what is he going to do? The only option would be to then get rid of him. And so luckily, he at least gets arrested. And after he gets arrested, his girlfriend, Barb, is just broken. Okay. You know, she was thinking that they were going to get married, that they were going to have this wonderful life. So she goes to jail because she doesn't believe anything that has been said. You know, she doesn't believe that he is who the papers are saying he is, which is this, you know, this vampire. Because as soon as he gets caught, he just gets verbal diarrhea. Like, he's overly excited to talk about everything. And he spills the beans on everything that he does. So she comes in and... sorry, I lost my spot where in my brain it does this thing where all of a sudden my brain's like, nope, we don't need that information.
Backspace delete.
Yep. So she gets disgusted when she finds out everything that happens, and he actually writes her a big letter, which I had also put on our page.
Oh, that's right, you did.
If people can zoom in and kind of read it, but kind of like a little
excerpt.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
She had asked him, why didn't you ever kill me? And so in the letter it said, how foolish of you to ask why I hadn't murdered you. Of course I had a million opportunities, I know that. But the idea never crossed my mind. I would have never hurt a hair on your head. The other business is something entirely separate and different. There was no affection involved. And I know the papers talked about 6 widows, but they haven't had the whole story yet. There was men as well as women. How many? I don't know. Probably a dozen or more. It was not their money, but their blood that I wanted, which is a lie.
Total lie.
It was the money, but he's trying to feed into this whole vampire thing to get his insanity plea. So she starts piecing together the timeline to really paint how monstrous this guy was. The week that he had killed Mac is when he also professed his love for her. While he's doing these heinous things, he's trying to move forward in the relationship with her. So it's the happiest time of her life.
But it's also hand in hand with the death and subsequent...
yeah, just bad shit all the way around.
Yeah, subsequent death and, like, soup making out of somebody else.
Exactly.
So while she's being wine dined and wooed into this amazing romance by this handsome, dashing fellow,
he's just a terrible piece of shit.
And he's also this complete horrifying person.
Mm-hmm. 2 days after he killed...
sounds like some people I've dated.
After 2 days after killing Mac's parents, they had spent a great day together. And they talked about marriage during the Henderson murders, and then when she found out that the gifts that he had given to her was one of his victims, Could you imagine what that would be like?
Fucking bananas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you're receiving
Gifts from a dead person, basically.
Well, no, you're receiving gifts from a live person.
Well, yeah.
That belong to a fucking dead person now, but... Ugh.
That's just... And the day after he killed Mrs. Duran Deacon...
Dude, that's like getting flowers on a first date.
That came from a grave?
Like taking off somebody's fresh grave. Like, fuck, man.
And what if she loved that dress? She's gonna go home and be like, well, can't fucking wear this now.
Oh.
Ugh. The bad juju. The day after he had killed Mrs. Duran Deacon is when they had tea together. She was just like, I cannot believe... I bet she could never trust anybody ever again.
It would most certainly be a hard pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, afterwards.
Oh,
Didn't matter who you were talking to, who you were, like, interacting with.
Mm-hmm.
After being just buffaloed like that. Ugh.
Yeah. Bad news bears. If John George Haig would have been able to keep his mouth shut for even a couple of days, Mrs. Duran would have dissolved completely. But thankfully, she didn't, because that's where most of the forensic findings come from, and that's where most of the evidence that they get from was actually from her. So teams would cover the area of the yard where he had disposed of them, of all of his victims, and for 3 days they would sift through all the sludge. They would wear gloves, and they would have to grease up their arms with Vaseline to try not to get the acid on their skin, which is just crazy when you think about how forensics handle crime scenes now versus obviously in the 40s. There wouldn't just be like gloves or, t-shirts and we're going to smear some Vaseline and hope for the best.
Vaseline. It's like Windex. Cures everything.
Right?
After finding the blood splatter in the shed that was consistent with use... All right.
Pull your tongue together.
Jesus Christ. Words! So after they found the blood splatter, which was consistent with human blood, they also found 28 pounds of human fat. They found 3 faceted gallstones, which... Goddamn, how was somebody living with that?
Right.
They found part of a left foot, 18 fragments of bone, a left ankle pivot bone, the center of a foot, like a right heel, another like ankle bone, some femur, pelvic, spinal column.
Ugh.
Essentially, they were all too eroded for like identification, but essentially came across a miscellaneous Mod Podge body.
Which we know most of that came from Mrs. Duran because she hadn't been in the soup for very long.
No, she hadn't had
time.
Which they actually found intact dentures. So she couldn't have been in there that long. I don't know how they made dentures then, but they're artificial material.
Right. They also had the handle of a plastic bag and a lipstick container, and plastic takes 3 weeks to dissolve, and they started doing this just a couple of days after Mrs. Duran was missing. So all of that kind of stuff was still there, and those dentures were a big thing.
Huge, because it's obviously you're gonna find those back in the day. You're gonna take them to a dentist. I can't imagine there were a saturated market like there is now with dentists everywhere that can do this kind of thing. And they're going to take this and be like,
do these fit any of your
patients? Where do these go?
And they were able to find the exact match, which came back to Deacon.
Right.
And so they were like, okay, we got him. We have enough now to hold him.
And go to trials. I think didn't they go to trial within a month?
Yeah, it was a very short amount of time.
They did not fuck around.
No.
They did their digging, they found their stuff, and they went.
Yep, they connected him.
And they went for the gold.
Yeah, but he thought, because he's established this weird vampire thing and he's going to try to claim insanity, he thought that he's not going to be tried for anything for
right, but he also asked an investigator, and I heard this in the documentary, that he actually asked what the chances were of somebody getting out of the local psychiatric ward. So that was brought up later during his trial, and that's where it was believed that maybe he fudged some of the details talking about his night terrors, the drinking of the blood, those kinds of things. They thought maybe he put that all into play because he was trying to sink that into an insanity plea.
Yeah, which is probably why he was like, yeah, I drank all the blood from all these people. I rolled around in it because that sounds insane.
Right.
And so that way he could hopefully try to swindle the judge and jury to be like, he is insane. He's not held competent, you know.
Right, and then go to this facility, but then later be released.
Yeah, so he can keep doing what he was doing.
Right. So clearly I made a mistake. I know what my mistake was.
Mm-hmm.
Put me in this nut hut.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get out, I can do it again. And I can proceed forward with fewer mistakes and not get caught.
Yeah. And so they would try to do all these examinations. They would hook up all these things to his head to try to, you know, pace what's actually going on the inside, like brain waves and different things like that. And all those things kept coming back normal.
Well, and back in the day of, like, extra super lobotomy land, I'm surprised they were like, yes, crazy, give it to Dr. Lobotomy.
Right?
Let him windshield wiper his forehead and we'll make him a normal human.
Ugh. So crazy. So crazy. But yeah, most of the doctors basically said that he was just faking it, that he is a complete fucking...
He was saying he was of competence.
Yeah, he knew what he was doing. And the defense would try to play his childhood, saying about how strict his house was. And sure, could that have played a small role?
It could have played a huge role. He could have been mentally ill. But he knew the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah.
And the doctors confirmed that.
And there was a lot of premeditation that went into before he even killed Mac.
Right. It would be different if in some kind of compulsory issue he choked somebody or stabbed somebody. But no, he went in, he sought out his victims, he made friends with them, he moved in with them, kept their dogs, and then put them in baths of acid.
Yeah, and so when you try to go for the insanity plea, it's very hard to actually do because you have to be deemed that you didn't know right from wrong during the time of the murder. You didn't know that what you were doing was wrong.
Right.
You had no idea because that's just not in your scope of
understanding.
Yes.
Right.
And so it's actually really, really, really hard. You can't just be like, oh, I'm like a psychopath. No, because you still know and you've planned it. They would still proceed to go through to trial. So on July 18th, 1949 is when he was convicted. It only took 15 minutes. They're like, no, this guy is crazy. And so they were going to sentence him to death. And they asked him if he had anything to say for himself. And that's when he's like, nothing at all. And so before they prep him, basically for his death, which doesn't come until the next month, they would still have people watching him, but he didn't know he was being watched to make sure that he wasn't insane.
Right, that he was competent, to make sure.
Mm-hmm. And as they're watching him, because he doesn't know he's being watched, so he can't keep up with that act.
Yeah, with the phony baloney bullshit.
That's when they cement in that, he's not insane, he didn't suffer from a mental disease.
Normal. Right.
And that would free him from his moral responsibility for his action. And so there was no reason to interfere with the sentencing. During this time, the newspaper picks up and they want him to write a story, which of course he's totally down for. And he finishes up his life story for the newspaper. He writes letters to his parents and his girlfriend Barbara. He would talk about how he believed in reincarnation and that he was going to return to finish his work, that he wasn't afraid of death. Before he is hanged, Madame Tussaud wanted a fitting for a death mask. He was more than happy to go along with that. And so it could be put in the Chamber of Horrors, which is it's still a place. I knew that a couple of years ago it got shut down because people were bringing their kids in there and it was traumatic and whatever. But I think it's reopened. I hope it is. I would love to go to England and go to that place because there's all the death masks.
There's many places in England I would like to go, including Diagon Alley, and then to the death mask.
Right? On August 6th, 1949, so not even a full month after his sentencing, he was hanged. And he willed all of his clothes to Madame Tussaud's Chamber of Horror, where they were going to make a wax figure of him, and he had specific instructions. He wanted his clothes kept in perfect condition, much like they were in life, pants creased, hair parted, shirt cuffs showing. He wanted to be perfect. And what's crazy, to lead into how much of a monster this guy was and how much he impacted things, in this shop of horrors, he was next to people like Hitler, Guy Fawkes, who we'll cover sometime because he's awesome.
I love that he was hanged.
Yeah.
Hanged?
They tied a rope around his neck and kicked him. And let him die.
And let him wiggle worm.
That will wrap up our acid bath killer. And he could have, if he would have taken some more time, slowed down his pace,
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
learned to not blow through money so quick, nobody would have ever found...
He literally could have gotten the McSwans and the Hendersons and lived a life
of luxury forever.
Oh my God, as though he had the golden goose that laid the golden egg.
But he got sloppy. His life was spiraling out of control.
The greed, the gambling.
But I think if he would have stayed in the basement even to keep shoveling
shit down that manhole into the sewers,
nobody would have ever suspected a thing. And
he
could have been an unsolved case.
For real.
A question to everybody else is like, what do you think? And do you think that with the acid bath killer, had he been more precise, would he have gotten away with it?
Absolutely. I think in the case of the acid bath killer, absolutely. Had he been more careful, had he continued with his space, the original space, he probably very much could have gotten away with it, and forever.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not. Maybe if all of these rich constituents
kept
fucking moving to fucking America and South Africa and shit, that would have become...
But I think he would have been able to do it for a lot longer than what he did.
Oh, I agree. Thank you guys for tuning in to episode number 3, The Acid Bath Killer.
Don't forget to follow us
on iTunes.
Yes.
Rate, review, subscribe.
Yes, we're also in apps.
Oh, Stitcher. We're in Podbean. We're in Overcast. We're literally everywhere.
Google Play. It's crazy.
So
we're just an outbreak right now.
It's like the bubonic plague. We can be found everywhere. Also, just want to real quick throw out there, I know we mentioned earlier, the Brohios.
Yes.
Go out, listen to their stuff. They are like serial killers, unsolved mysteries, urban legend, and they're fucking hilarious.
There's a lot of comedy.
A lot. And I appreciate it. Like, me and Spencer both look forward to those episodes, and we listen to them while he's painting and I'm cooking. So
yeah, and huge shout out to all of our friends and people that have reached out to us to give us that support of
yes,
you're doing a good job.
Yes.
Special shout out to our buddy Bruce.
Yes.
Who gave us some really good feedback, things like that, and saying that he's kind of helping us out, with spreading. Word of mouth does a lot.
It really does, and really to all of our local people, who our friends Angel and Jess, Quinn's cousin
Annalie, who stopped you in the store.
Stopped me in the store,
which is
to
insane.
Tell me that she enjoyed our podcast. I thoroughly enjoyed that. That made my whole day. It really did. Just thank you to everybody. Yeah. And follow us. Follow us on Instagram, Color Me Dead Podcast.
We're on Twitter at Color Me Dead Pod, which I still need to learn. I'm secretly 1,000 years old, I'm pretty sure.
I don't enjoy Twitter as much as I enjoy other social media, but I know how to use it. It exists. I don't like it.
I fumble through Instagram. I may be 27, but I'm secretly an 85-year-old perverted man. I don't know how to use anything. Snapchat, couldn't figure that out, so I finally said, fuck that. I'm not doing that anymore.
You can use Marco Polo, but you can't do Snapchat. Follow us on Facebook at Color Me Dead, and there's also the Color Me Dead group, so that you guys can get together and chat about the podcast, talk about different cases, or if you've got ideas, email us at colormedeadpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, we always want to hear about those kind of crazy cases. If you have anything that's local, or just a case that you find interesting that not a lot of people know about, because I personally enjoy covering those cases more than even the big ones that we all know and appreciate.
The heavy hitters are always fun to listen to, and especially depending on who does it.
Right.
But it's those little pearls, dude. Yep. It's the hidden gems
that I personally just really enjoy.
Which, stay tuned, guys, for episode number 4, because that's gonna be a really good one.
All right. Anyways, with this one, side-eye, well-dressed people, stay out of chalk lines.
Spay and neuter your pets.
Yeah.
And stay the fuck out of chalk lines.
Yes.
Goodbye.